Hi there. I'm just offering a message before we get going this week. The Gravity Well is now posting episode 28, and we've taken down episodes 7, 14, and 21 due to inadequate vetting of our guest. I aim to host authentic conversations with members of the community or concerned groups discuss, and I apologize to the Blackfoot Confederacy. Our vetting process has been updated to ensure we have appropriate community representation and support on a topic before we proceed. It was recommended that we dedicate an episode to discussing our mistake and better understand the risks of misrepresentation. The conversation is set up for this upcoming Tuesday, October 22nd, though I did have a one-on-one conversation with a member of a different community today as well. Please reach out to info@the-Gravity Well if you want to participate or if you have suggestions. I'm extremely grateful to the Blackfoot Confederacy for allowing me to learn from this mistake. So really looking forward to that. And with that, I'm going to kick off tonight's episode. Welcome to the Gravity Well podcast. Here we break down heavy ideas into small buckets that you can handle. Our mission is simple. Help us work through your dilemmas in conversation and process. Together, we and our community will face your dilemmas and make the world a better place for all beings. In the spirit of truth, I acknowledge I am a settler on stolen Blackfoot Treaty 7 and Métis Districts 5 and 6 territories. I take reconciliation by seeking the wisdom of elders and individuals who aim to restore water, air, land, life, or community. A healthy living relationship with the earth and each other is our guide. Welcome back, Vanessa. I'm so glad that you're with us. We had the opportunity to meet Vanessa, and she graciously offered to redo our conversation so that we made sure we gave a full hour to your work and that we could dive into it more fully, which is just so wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time again, Vanessa.
Excellent. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and with that, why don't, if you wouldn't mind, please do a reintroduction of yourself just so that we have it for this episode. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. Well, my name is Venessa Ebertz. I'm a doctor of acupuncture. I practice here in Calgary, Alberta, a one-on-one practice called Blue Frog Wellness. And I also practice out of Wayfound Mental Health Center at the downtown location here in Calgary as well. So I kind of have my aim is to cover a few different aspects in tonight's conversation, but we're definitely going to talk about sort of both streams that I have going on and how they all fit into the traditional Chinese medicine model and how perhaps that might be a benefit to some of the listeners out there, and definitely answer some questions for some curiosity that might be looming about Chinese medicine. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I will back up to say how I came to know Vanessa. So my husband, Chris, is on the city fire department and had the opportunity to do one of the ear treatment work, some of the ear treatment work that Vanessa does. We'll get into that a little bit later when we get into the details more. But, and then I've had the opportunity to see you in your traditional practice. So it's been good to have exposure to both. So that'll help this conversation move along. And it's been really life altering for us so far. Chris's pain that he's worked through with you significantly. So, and that, and in conversation with you as well, is understanding how Chinese medicine can help us understand how to be in balance with the environment and with nature so that we can be healthier and have that important respect for the earth that comes with Chinese medicine understanding. So anyway, we'll get into that. But okay, let's start with, if you wouldn't mind, Vanessa, give us an overview of traditional Chinese medicine, please.
Yeah, for sure. So the scope of this hour might not cover absolutely every detail of Chinese medicine because it is a very big topic. However, hopefully you'll leave with a little bit more of an understanding of just the framework and then how we can kind of go down a few different avenues to get a little more specific as we go. But essentially, if you're thinking about Chinese medicine at all, we need to think of it as its own unique, complete system of medicine. So we use Chinese medicine to treat, to prevent, and also to diagnose disease, but from a Chinese medicine perspective. So some things will be very similar to how we see things in Western medicine, but many things are quite different. And that just comes with that it's been around for 2,000 years plus. And so, you know, back then we didn't have technology to help us diagnose things, right? We had observation as our main tool. And, when you have a giant population, you can really hone in on what the trends are pretty quickly. So there's definitely been some benefit to how this originated and how it's come to be as we know it today. Truthfully, it's only been in the West since the 1970s. Richard Nixon actually went over to China to reestablish some connections and get some trade happening. And oddly enough, one of his journalists ended up having an appendix attack, had to go into the hospital, had his appendix removed. But while he was there getting his treatment, he also received acupuncture for pain relief and just overall general healing. And he was just impressed by it. So he came back and he wrote an article for New York Times about his treatment. And so shortly after that, everyone was starting to get like, what is this acupuncture thing? What is traditional Chinese medicine? How does it work? So it's really not been in America or North America for very long. So it's still kind of in its infancy as we know it here in the West, but obviously dates back quite far. So really what you have to think about when you think about Chinese medicine is that our whole system is predicated on this notion of qi or energy, right? So everything in our body is animated by some type of energy. And really you can be, broad sense qi means like energy of your whole body, everything around you, everything inside. But then you can really get specific, and each organ has a specific qi. Your skin will have qi. Your thoughts will have a qi. Your emotions will have qi, right? So what we're trying to do is always find out what's going wrong with somebody when they have any kind of physical ailment or mental emotional ailment. There'll be some kind of blockage, obstruction, or deficiency of the qi flow. So we're always trying to find out, okay, what's really going on? How do we find out what's in the way? How do we get that out of the way or change that up so the qi can be flowing smoothly now? That restores all the balance, because much like Western medicine, we see homeostasis as the guiding principle for the human body, right? If you give a body proper environment, it will go back into regulation. It doesn't matter if you've had a surgery or you're on some form of medication or whatnot. Truthfully, if you set up the body to be in that element where things can regulate, they will go back to their normal operating system, right? So Chinese medicine is always trying to find out what is in the way, essentially. Now, with that being said, really the theories that kind of make up the whole bulk of Chinese medicine are three different distinct theories. So we have the qi, blood, body fluid theory. So, your energy, your qi is going to move your blood. So that's going to create your circulation, right? So if you have some kind of blockage or a heart condition or even diabetes and metabolic syndrome, you're probably going to have something disrupted in the qi flow, and we want to get that going again. With that being said, we also have yin and yang theory. So if you've ever seen the yin and yang symbol, it's really polar opposites that are mutually flowing from one state to the next within each other. So you have the yang, which is your daytime energy, your active energy, male energy, sunshine, hot, spicy. That's all yang energy in nature. And yin will be the exact opposite. So you have cooling, restorative, quenching, slowness, stillness, rejuvenation is all yin energy. So yin and yang must always be flowing. And the symbol that has the yang with a little white dot in it, it means that it's being attracted over into the yin. And so they're continuously flowing, should never be stagnant, right? So that's one of the main theories, that if you have yin and yang balance, things are working very well. When yin and yang is not balanced, you can have hormone disruptions, you can have mood disorders, you can have insomnia, all kinds of different things. Because yin and yang are essentially a form of qi as well. So you can think of it that way. And then lastly, we also have basically the 5 elements theory. So this is basically going to overlay everything we see in Chinese medicine. And it comes from the agrarian society of, folks watching the patterns that we saw in nature, right? You plant your seeds in spring and you let them grow for the summer. And in the fall, you're going to harvest things. And then in the winter, you're going to store things. So it's basically that same thing. And if you're in alignment with all of those seasonal changes and the climates that go with that and the foods that are in season at the time, you're going to be very healthy. But if you're in the middle of, heat or summer, or even summer heat, like sort of autumn, and you're eating really spicy, dry foods, like sriracha on everything, you're going to have a yin problem. You're going to have too much heat in your system, burning up your cooling nature, of your system. So we always want to find balance. And that's really how we restore the chi flow. We restore whatever is in the way, is we look to find out what's going to bring this back into balance. So like I said, if you're too hot, we want to make you cooler. Too cold, we want to warm you up. And that's basically the whole principle of how it all works. Now, with that being said, everything can be broken down, whether you have diabetes, indigestion, insomnia, infertility, back pain, anything, migraines, anything can be broken down or distilled into a pattern of disharmony. So again, this is the what's in the way part. So the pattern of disharmony will essentially be predicated on 8 principles. So yin and yang, hot and cold, interior, exterior. And then we're just basically going to be distilling things all the way through. So, you know, if you have strep throat, you've probably got an exterior invasion, something from the outside pathogen getting to your throat. It's going to be hot because you're probably sweating. You're probably maybe have a nosebleed, dryness. You just like can't cool down. And so what we'll want to do is always kick that back out. So we want to use things that are going to be cooling. If you eat more spicy food when you have strep throat, it's going to make it worse. But if you have things that are a little more cooling, quenching, cucumbers, watermelon, that kind of stuff, it will help to soothe your throat and get things healing faster. So really, that's the overarching kind of view of how Chinese medicine works. But you do have to remember that it is a holistic view. So we're taking into account the whole person. So not just what is the thing that you're sick with, what is the pathogen, what is the virus or the bacteria or whatever. We want to see what is it and how is it affecting you in your constitution currently at the moment, because we can always balance both of those things. So when people come see me, usually they'll say, hey, I have this shoulder pain. I will always find out what's going on underneath that. Do you have a blood deficiency? Maybe there's some stagnation in the shoulder. You had an injury there and the blood flow is not really moving very well. And once we revert that pattern, they feel better. So really back to that homeostasis, things fall back into place. So does that?
Yeah. I'm just going to reflect a couple things back for you, what I heard, Vanessa.
Yeah.
So Chi, what I heard from you is we want harmony. That was what came to mind for me, because you were talking about how Chi can be different in each of your organs. And so I'm thinking of that system being in harmony together, right? And those signals that you would get from them if they're not. But then also that flow is required too. So to think of it not as a constant state, but to understand that it's always dynamic and potentially changing. I listened to your video that you pointed me to before we met tonight, and I do my homework, I promise. But if it's given, right? But yeah, so the thing that stuck out for me in there was you were saying the flow. Like if somebody is saying, I need to be treated for this, you're going to be looking for, well, where's it coming from and where's it going? And then also if it changes, then you need to suddenly change and adapt to that new state, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what's really interesting to me is it's this overarching view helps us see the patterns rather than potentially the symptom and treating the symptom. And it's fascinating because, you know, a lot of doctors in Western, at least here in Calgary, I've left practices that have said, I'm only looking at one thing, you book another appointment. Because to me, it's, no, I know they're related, you know, I can't look at these things in isolation and think that that's effective. So anyway, so thank you for getting into some of the 5 elements. One of the things I was hoping you could explore a bit again about when somebody's born and how are the elements come into play in terms of when you're born in this year. Is that right? And then also in time, is that true?
Yeah. So you bring up a couple different things. So first, let me just go back and also advise that, you know, with that pattern of disharmony we find, that will dictate how we're going to treat it, right? So whether we use acupuncture, which would be the main modality, I would say, of traditional Chinese medicine, alongside with Chinese herbs to balance that pattern out. But then lifestyle, dietary recommendations, Qigong, Tai Chi, meditation, other things that will help out will all be in accordance with that pattern of disharmony. And it's funny you mentioned too, just about the one item, isolated item, a Western doctor might say that's all they have time for. I do really want to get a note in my clinic that says we will address all of your ailments in this one visit, because you're right, they are completely related. And it might seem unrelated to most people, but you know, your constipation and your night sweats and your acne are probably all one pattern of too much heat or damp heat. And we start clearing that out for someone, and lo and behold, all those things get better. So like, wow, I just feel better. I'm like, because it's all one thing, right? So you're totally right on that. So we'll hopefully be able to shed more light on what those patterns look like in a future episode, maybe. But yeah, so really what you're asking about is a little bit more related to the 5 elements framework. And there's, again, 2 sort of different ways to go about that. So again, Chinese culture has this overlaid on many different things, but definitely on your constitution type, just how you are when you're born. And that is all predicated on the 5 elements, which are fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. All of those 5 elements will relate to a different organ. They'll all relate to one of the sense organs. They'll relate to an emotion, they'll relate to a color, and they'll even relate to a sound. So we can kind of get a picture of what type of element people might be by what they look like, what they sound like, maybe some of the emotions that they seem to be, kind of in more often than not. But that is basically your constitutional type when you're born. And they say like you're born with a certain amount of jing, which is your essence, and that comes from your mother and father. And then you can't really get more jing as you get older, but you can nourish it or at least stop it from like draining out of your system by resting and not overworking in these things. But with that being said, there's also another, I guess, a side spin to Chinese culture, which is Chinese astrology. Traditional Chinese medicine touches on that, but not necessarily in a depth way. But yeah, it's exactly that. Basically, the story goes that way back, there was an emperor who wanted to host a party and nobody showed up at his party. So he was pretty depressed. And finally, some people started arriving, but it wasn't people, it was actually the animals. So there's 12 of them. So he decided, you're each going to get your own designated year. So dragon, you're going to get this year, and snake, you're going to get the next year, and ox, you're going to get that year. So basically he kind of named all 12 animals as like, you're the sort of keeper of this year. And the qualities or the characteristics of these animals apply to the people born in that year. So you have basically the 12-year cycle. So you might be a horse, a dragon, a snake, any of pig, dog, any of those things. And every 5 years, you're also going to be one of the elements. So for me, I'm an earth horse, which makes sense. I work, and I'm very grounded, and I like to be very connected to the earth and all those things, right? Not so caught up in all the other fancy things in life. I'm more like, hey, let's just be real here, right? So you'll find that, and you'll find like there will be fire roosters and whatever. So that will kind of lend itself to a little bit more of the personality type. But it's funny enough that people actually do have a lot of the physical attributes of those animals, right? Just, how far apart your eyes are set and your cheekbones and all your structures. So one key component of facial diagnosis specifically for Chinese medicine recognizes those elements. So, we're going to look at your jaw, and we're going to find out what's the state of your jing, what's the state of your essence or your constitution, like how much fortitude were you born with, kind of thing. And I think I was mentioning, like, you can build that. There are people that are put into like politics, or they have to be the face of something, or they have to, deliver news to mass audiences or whatnot. And they have to like be the courageous, I'm strong, like, yeah, I got your back kind of feeling. And you'll see them over time, their jaw will get bigger. They'll literally, because they're clenching and they're using their jaw, they're putting more tension there, the bone mass will actually get more dense. And you'll see some people's face shapes will actually change over time based on what's required of them as they go through life. And totally. And like traumas, like in the one video I sent, Lillian Bridges was the lady who is basically I guess you could say the godmother of facial diagnosis. She comes from a long line of people who did this. Sadly, she's passed away now, but she was always really good at quickly pointing out key features in people and saying, here's when this arrived. If you look back to 1982, you'll see whoever's image change, and it'll be because something significant happened. So she cites the one lady who, she saw in her office, and the next time she saw her, she had a really dimpled up chin. And the dimpled up chin shows a state of fear, like there was fear and shock, and it's hitting the kidney area, which is your water element. And so she asked her, like, what happened? And she basically had a massive car accident, right? So a major trauma. We also can note that Donald Trump has a very dimpled chin. So you can see this in celebrities, and hockey players have really furrowed brows because that's your wood element. And the wood element is what is going to be required when you need to have grit, right? When you need to be like a tree. You need to be flexible, but you need to be strong. You need to be reliable, and you need to be adaptable, but sturdy, right? So you'll see a lot of like athletes actually just have really bushy eyebrows, and that's one sign that they've acquired a lot of that wood element, which will only help them in their career doing that. So yeah, so we can see kind of the different areas of your face will be different organs that it's related to and different characteristics, and they all come with some personality traits. So yeah, it's super fascinating. Facial diagnosis could be like, again, another whole topic for us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try, and you were saying that there's kind of 3 avenues, and then maybe we can start exploring the ear avenue like we talked about before.
Oh yeah. No, basically like that whole overarching theme of traditional Chinese medicine, like I said, is basically it'd be like going to see a GP, right? We're a family doctor. We know the general gist of many different things, but then you can always, and this is what has always attracted me to Chinese medicine, is that you will never stop learning. I can read all the books out there, and I will still not even put a dent into the knowledge that is out there. And thankfully, more are being transcribed from Chinese to languages that we can all understand, French and English and whatnot. So basically, you have that big view, and then you can always narrow down. You can go into fertility treatments. You can go into musculoskeletal stuff. You can go into mental emotional stuff. So really, they always say that, as you go through your career, your people who come to see you will basically tell you what your career path is, where you're going to go with it. So that was basically how I ended up where I am now. And I would say I largely treat stress and trauma. I mean, most people have stress in today's world, just the way that it is. But it really confounds a lot of the ailments that we see, right? Crohn's disease and IBS and sleep issues and infertility. And that is so many things, right? Even like hormonal things can largely be exacerbated by stress that people aren't managing very well. So
skin issues. Yeah. I remember getting a rash from stress at work once. Yeah.
Yeah, hives, migraines, like so many different things, right? So I always thought, like, if you could address the stress, if you could help people, unwind some of the stagnation they have, it's typically a liver qi stagnation thing. So we want to get the liver energy moving again. Then they'll relax. Their tightness and their tension just deflates, right? Any pain will be less because now they have flow, right? When you're all tight and tense, how do you think your flow happens? Like your blood vessels to your brain. No wonder you have migraines and stiff neck and dizziness and stuff. It's like, well, you're literally cutting that flow off. So we need to like loosen up, and acupuncture can definitely help with that. So with that being said, one specific area of acupuncture is ear acupuncture. And we really use that a lot for addictions, health, and mental wellness, just in general, because a lot of the points on the ear, first off, the ear is a microsystem of your whole entire body. So we could just treat anything for anyone just with your ear. And there are some practitioners who do that. They're very good at it. Li Chun Wang is probably the leader in that. She's in Florida, but she'll just take one look at your ear, and it's amazing what she can tell you. She'll tell you about broken bones you had when you were 10 and ovarian cysts that you have now and astigmatism and heart disease and all these things just by looking at the ear, because she's done so much work with it. Yeah. So there's really nothing we couldn't treat with the ear, but it's really good for nervous system regulation and mental wellness because of the connection to the brain is so close. But also we've mapped out specific points on the ear that when we needle them, they stimulate those areas of the brain. So we know that you needle the hippocampus area, the hippocampus will light up in the brain in the MRI, functional MRI scan. And that's been done since the 90s in the Helms Institute and various studies with the US military now to really promote that. But again, how the ear acupuncture really came again to North America was 1970s, late 70s. There's a hospital in the Bronx, actually, that Lincoln Memorial Hospital, that was treating heroin addiction. And they didn't have a lot of funding. Funding was always an issue for them. So someone came back and said, oh yeah, I was in a hospital in China and I had this ear stuff. And funny enough, like I don't crave the smokes like I did before I had the surgery or whatever. So they quickly caught on and thought maybe there's like like an addictions thing that's happening with the ear acupuncture. So they wanted to know more, and they standardized 5 points that are key for helping someone go through any kind of withdrawal, any kind of cravings and habits that they had around addictions. And it worked very well. So they implemented it. First, they started off with ear acupuncture that had electrostimulation to it, but they ran out of money to buy the batteries for the stimulators. So then they're like, well, let's just see what happens if we just put the 5 needles in and see how people go. And they stuck with the program longer. They had very lowered rates of relapse. And just in general, people's health and wellness got better. So they're like, we got to keep that up. So really Michael Smith, who again has also passed away, sadly, he pioneered this whole thing. And now we know that as the NADA protocol, or the National Acupuncture Detox Association protocol, which is used mostly in addiction circles, but there are counselors who are trained in this protocol. And so they do it for depression, anxiety, bipolar disease, any kind of insomnia, and all those kinds of things with really good success. And the great news about it is you can't really harm someone with their ear, right? There's no lungs to puncture. There's no nerves to damage. There's nothing bad that can really, so very low risk. So yeah, so that's basically where I've kind of moved my practice down into ear acupuncture specifically for trauma, because it just does such a great job of shifting that for people where they feel better and they're sleeping better and their digestion's better and all those things. And then whatever else they're doing on top of that will only be enhanced. So yeah, so that's basically kind of how we can kind of niche down. But for me, that's the path that I ended up with.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, yeah, I want to just offer from what we've experienced. So as I said, my husband did this ear acupuncture 12-week program with Vanessa and others. And yeah, it was remarkable. So Chris, back in 2012, late 2012, tore his pec doing a training exercise and didn't get treated properly for a while. And it led to a bunch of long-term issues for him. Just constant pain in his neck and arm, shoulder and arm from it. So yeah, for the first time since he thought he was going to live with that pain for the rest of his life, and it's gone. So it's pretty remarkable. And then so much has changed with his diet and with his like what he needs in terms of, like, it's interesting you talk about how it would take away any desire to have like an addiction kind of thing. Not to say that that's an issue, but Chris has not really wanted to have alcohol and other things as much, right? Because of, I think, the treatment. So I think that's just fascinating to know hand in hand, So that's just a lived experience of what you've done for us. So thank you for that, Vanessa.
Yeah.
And can you also talk a little bit about how doing it in a group matters? We got a chance to speak earlier, and you were talking about how, for example, Tai Chi is done in a group, and the power of doing these sessions in a group, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that question a lot, actually. There's a lot of people that want to know, like, what is the actual mechanism behind that? And really, if you look at psychology studies, you will find that group therapy actually has fared well, better than one-on-one individualized treatments. And the theory behind that is they think, well, it's just, when you're in a group setting, you don't feel as alone, right? You're like, oh, I'm not the only one with this problem. I'm not the only defective person here, right? Like, these people have this. And so you see that it's more accepting, you're more accepting of it, because you're like, okay, this is not just a me thing. This is actually a bigger thing that I'm part of, kind of thing. But yeah, we definitely know that. So again, it all comes down to chi flow, right? Individually, we all have our own chi, but when you're collectively in a group, the amount of chi that's there is greater than the sum of the parts. Like it amplifies. And this is why when you're, at a concert or something, you have those high highs and you're so excited to see this band everybody loves. It's because you're all in that same wavelength and you're all kind of riding that same adrenaline wave, which is a form of chi flow, right? And conversely, like if it's something negative, you're in some sort of mob that's going on, you're feeling that intensity too, right? It intensifies the energy of the group. So it's always been more beneficial. And there was actually a study that was just done in 2020 here in Calgary with people who were undergoing cancer treatments for breast cancer. So they basically created 2 groups. One group was going to get ear acupuncture, but only individually. So, 1 session a week, same amount of time, same needles, whatnot. And the other group was doing this within a setting of like half of the group. So I think it was 20 people. And they found that just the results were so much better. Like people had less pain. They slept better. Their digestive health seemed to be in some way improved. And so their overall well-being was just greater than if they did it one-on-one. So I know some people do have hiccups to trying something out and being like, well, I don't know if I want to try that in a group setting. And, I don't know who I'm going to see there or whatever. But once you get into that, you actually feel more supported. And it really fosters, if it is a group of like-minded professionals, like the fire department study, then they feel more open. It's a safe space to have conversations that they might not otherwise have, right? And I think that's really one of the great benefits if you can kind of find a group that everyone has that same commonality, because again, they might feel alone. They might think they're the only one that feels this way, and they find out there's 10 other people that are in the same boat, struggling with the same issues. And maybe there's somebody that had gone through it 2 years prior and is now offering like, here's what I tried. Here's what helped. Here's who you should talk to. And then in doing that, they have that connectedness. And I think that is just a really good depiction of what happens in society, right? When we become disconnected from one another, when we decide to isolate ourselves, which sadly happens when we're traumatized because you feel, nobody else understands what I'm going through and you don't really want to be around people. So you isolate yourself, but then you don't get better that way, right? So it is really this coming back into a community that will enhance your healing, because you're not alone, right? You're not just an isolated variable. You're a member of society, a very valued member of society. And once you start feeling that, then healing is just more open. So yeah, it's always been greater in groups. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, it's interesting. And while you're saying that too, it makes me think about, and this isn't a question necessarily, we can take this away kind of question. Who are our communities these days? Like, this is part of the challenge we have, is that we don't have, my kids don't go to the local school, and we have the local store and local things. And so there's a lot of, even on the fire department, you're not generally at a hall. Same thing with my work. I didn't have one company I worked for 9, so there's a whole bunch of, and same thing with sports, is different groups when school, and, so it's all very separate. Again, going back to this, not having this holistic approach. Yeah. It's just all very interesting. Do you have anything to add from what I just said there? Or
well, I would just say that's when you're doing that, that's like you're scattering the chi, right? You're like you go to work and you're, like you said, you're different jobs. You don't have a community there, so it's kind of a dead end, right? Your kids don't all go. Everyone who lives on the same block no longer goes to the same school. So again, kind of a dead end there. So at every point in our fabric of society, we have this like disjointed chi that's happening, right? That it's not flowing, it's stopping and starting, and that's why we see the irritability that's out there, and the aggression and the anger, and everybody wants to blame everyone, right? And it's like, if we just got back to visiting with one another, visiting in nature, doing things as a group, like sadly someone's house burns down or something, everyone comes together as a community and helps rebuild the house. Like we don't really see that as much as we used to. And I think if we get back to that, so many things will benefit, but also it requires every individual to make the effort to find those groups and become part of them, I think, just in my own personal opinion on that. But yeah, you're very right.
Yeah. And I agree. I think this is very much needed. And actually something you had sent me a note after we met last time, talking about essentially bioregional organizing, which is what the work we're trying to do in parallel to this conversation, is try to get people back in community, talking on these important things that hold us together. Because ultimately the big picture is our needs. It's all what we all, it's like, for example, water is one of the biggest overarching issues. We all need water. We are water, 80% of us, right? So this whole idea of making sure we're looking after water. And what's interesting too is we've done the same thing on the landscape. When you talk about affecting the chi, we've put patterns that weren't natural in the landscape. So we've cut into the earth that way, that doesn't allow for the water to flow in the way that it should, which is now, they're discovering that there's big issues with the water cycle.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This is all stuff that we need to be working on. And so why I'm so grateful to be hearing how there is it's like 2,000 years of knowledge behind how we gain balance again. So this is just, I'm going to come away from this with so many ideas. Okay, so yeah, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about your day-to-day work too. So you've got, you're doing this ear training. So sorry, I'm just going to be clear. So you do this, we're just going to hit this for people. The ear acupuncture group treatment for stress and trauma, that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 5 at Wayfound Medical Health Group. So it's, so it's $40 a visit to do that. And it's recommended to do it over a 12-week period. I'm thinking about this for myself because it's something that is local and simple and potentially could bring people together in community. And there's a lot of, I talk in my groups, there's a lot of stress around the environmental crisis, right? So
absolutely.
I think there is I've certainly had some very tearful evenings thinking about what potentially we're up against. So I'm sure there's other people in my sphere that could benefit from that. Okay, but you also do a whole other practice. And I do want to say, because, I feel like we dove into this really quick and you were being potentially modest, but Vanessa, you hold a PhD in acupuncture, is that right?
Not quite a PhD. We are called Doctors of Acupuncture as a designation from the Alberta government, actually in 2020 as well. But yeah, my background is essentially, I started off in athletic therapy at Mount Royal. I went to U of C, did kinesiology, and then from there I thought I'd become a physiotherapist. But I went to the open house at McCune University in Edmonton for the acupuncture program. And immediately I was like, nope, this is where I need to be, because we're going to that root cause. Why do you have back pain? Not everybody has this kind of back pain. Why do you have that specifically to you? And solve it in a little bit more of a natural way. So so that's basically where that went. And yeah, perhaps I will further some studies down the line, but yeah, just Doctor of Acupuncture comes from the Alberta government designating us as that. But hopefully we'll see a PhD program one day, but not quite yet, especially not in North America.
Okay, well, thank you again for your modesty, and I appreciate that correction. Yeah, but okay, so in your day-to-day practice, like I do want to touch on when we met, you said to me upon leaving, you need to be in the mountains and you need to be near water. So I know that's one part of the work you're doing. Obviously, the acupuncture itself does a whole job, but if you can just talk through, I don't know, a little bit, if you're comfortable with that, how you do your assessments and how you decide how to treat people, maybe? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a whole framework for that in Chinese medicine. So, and it's funny because a lot of times people come to me, they've never had a treatment before. And they always comment on, wow, she really listened to my stuff I had to say. That she took the time. She asked me a lot of questions. She looked at my tongue and she felt my pulse and all these things. And it from a patient perspective, it feels like I matter, like I'm being seen, I'm being heard, all those things. But that's literally ingrained in how we have to look at everything and diagnose. So as you're talking to me, I'm looking at your face and I'm looking at the dryness or the texture of your skin, and I'm listening to your voice and hearing, is it, high pitch, low pitch, crack? Do you have anything going on? So we're always observing. Number one, we'll probably smell your breath as we're talking and things like that. These will all be little clues. And then as we're asking you, essentially it's 10, we call it 10 plus 2, so 12 questions that relate to like your temperature and your digestion and your energy levels. Even your libido, your sexual activity will tell us something. If you have any pain in your body anywhere, and your emotions. And so once we kind of get a broad view of what's really going on, what's kind of a problem for you or what's standing out, that's where I say we can really narrow down our pattern of disharmony into really one major thing that we need to treat. So one major boulder in your life, and it could be, like this is sort of a constitutional thing. You've always had it. You always need to overcome it, kind of thing, or you've acquired it because you've worked your butt off for too long and didn't get enough rest, or you didn't eat properly, or you're under high stress situation, or you're, a parent and you have kids and that alone is diverting all your attention, right? So we always try to find that. And in doing that, we're definitely going to look at your tongue and we are going to feel your pulse. The tongue is also a map of your whole body. So it'll tell us what organs have something going on. The color will tell me if there's too much heat, if there's not enough blood, like if you're anemic. It will tell me basically if there's a lot of dampness or anything like that, you'll have a coating on your tongue. So either a thick yellow coating or a thick white coating. Yellow will be more damp heat, white will be more damp cold. So that means we need to lay off the smoothies and the ice cream and the ice cold things, or the French fries and deep fried things, anything that has dampness qualities to it, because that's going to slow down your chi flow, probably mostly in your digestive center. We're going to look at the shape. If it's really pointed, you have a lot of yin deficiency. So again, that cooling nature of your body is depleted, again, because you may be working through the night. Or I used to be a flight attendant. That's definitely going to deplete our chi because it's a dry environment. We're not on a set schedule. And many times I worked red eye flying. So that definitely will take a hit there. So we'll look at your tongue and that will tell us something. And then your pulse will definitely corroborate what we see with the tongue. And everything that you've told us about your symptoms. So that's really how we filter all this basket, weave it all through, and really come down to one solid pattern or a couple patterns that might be interrelated. And then we start treating that. So we always say we treat the root, which for me would be like a kidney qi deficiency, kidney yang deficiency, right? You as well, you're probably more kidney yin deficiency, right? So that's why I say if you get out into nature and you get to the mountains, especially mountains tonify the kidney energy because they're like cooling and quenching and restorative and calm and quiet and kind of dark, right? And also water will do that because especially if you're on the dry side of things or the hot side of things, we want to nourish the sort of the ability to quench your system, right? So that's why I said that specifically to your pattern. But that's what we're always trying to do. And so we'll always come to our pattern of diagnosis. And then from there, we'll treat the root. So for me, if it was kidney qi deficiency, I'm going to use acupuncture points specifically that will do that. And how we know that is every organ has a meridian attached to it. Let me just grab my dog here. I'll show you. So every organ will have a meridian. So you have a kidney meridian, a heart meridian, a pericardium meridian, a lung meridian, a large intestine meridian, a gallbladder meridian, bladder meridian. So when you're having issues with any one of those organs, we can use points along the actual meridian to influence, and each point will have different functions. So some points will clear heat. So they'll actually cool you down. So if you have that yin deficiency and you're hot and you're sweating and you're dry and you're like just your eyes are having problems focusing because you have dry eye, that will cool you down and those points will help quench that. If you're cold to the bone, like a hypothyroid female that's, overweight and lethargic and sleepy all the time and probably anemic, you're going to want to use points that will tonify. So they'll warm things up. They'll nourish that yang energy and add more heat to your system to give you that energy, that burst of fuel that you need to get things kind of back on track. So each meridian will influence those organs and each point along the meridians will have specific functions. And with that being said, in Western way of looking at things, we have studied some of these points. And we know that when you needle stomach 36, which is just below your kneecap, 2 hours later, your white blood cell count goes up. And it's funny because one of the indications for stomach 36 is anytime you need to boost someone's immune system. And if you use that regularly, you will have a very strong, robust immune system. And you could do that with acupuncture, but you could rub it and have acupressure, massage it. You could put a cup on there and have a little bit of like a suction that will stimulate that point as well. Or we have a thing called moxibustion, which is we burn a little herb called mugwort. It's a member of the sage family, and it will also, the properties of that herb are very warming and tonifying. So if you put that on stomach 36, now you're really cooking with gas because you're really adding warmth to that point that already is going to enhance you or tonify you. And so it'll do that at a greater effect. So that's really where we begin. But then if someone says, hey, but I also sprained my ankle, or I also have this headache thing going on, well, that might be a branch. So that might not be the underlying cause of something. Like let's say back pain. If you came in with back pain, I'd want to help you feel better so your back pain is reduced when you leave. But I also want to know, why did that happen? So if you're blood deficient, you could have back pain on the regular. If we nourish your blood and the deficiency goes away, you're going to have less propensity to have this back pain returning again and again, because the underlying condition that allowed that to happen is now been resolved. So we're always trying to do root and branch at the same time. So hopefully that explains a little bit about how we see things in a treatment setting.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how some of these things you know inherently, or it happens. You know, number one, I was saying I like to be in the mountains. Like I'm always trying to be there. So I think it's something that inherently I know without knowing this science. And then also foods. You know, we talked a little bit before, Vanessa, and you know, when it comes to the summer, I think you were saying this, you want cooling foods because most people are hot regardless, I suppose, of is it your chi? Am I saying that right?
Yep.
So anyway, so you want to eat those foods, but I find come the fall, you don't want that. Like a salad seems odd. And like last time you were saying you need squash in the fall. Like again,
Mhm.
when I go back to my heritage of being Ukrainian, I mean, we had certain things you eat in certain times of the year. Well, number one, what's available, of course,
Mhm.
also what is likely to serve you at that time, right? Like eating an apple out of season, for example. Oh, I guess that's a bad example, but like eating strawberries out of season, they don't generally taste as good
Mhm.
when you have them in season, right? Anyway, yeah, can you say a little bit about diet and how that fits in with your work too? Because I know that's part of what you also recommend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, because when you can give people diet and lifestyle advice, it gives them agency over their own healing, right? So they're okay, I can do these, and there are very small changes that make a big, profound difference. And really, when I was a flight attendant, so many people would ask me, okay, how can I help this condition, or I have this problem or whatever? So I'd write down a list of foods and some teas that they should be drinking and things to avoid, right? And they'd come running across the airport 2 months later and whip open their lunch kit and show me all the stuff that they had in their lunch. And they're, look, I'm eating beets now. Oh, I have dates. I have oatmeal for breakfast, and I feel so much better. And I was just like so amazed that they paid attention. They actually tried this out, because, you know, some people it's just knowledge in and knowledge out. They don't really take it to heart, but they tried it and they felt better. And I was just like, it's so small of a change. Doesn't require you to go to the health food store and spend $800 a month on supplements. But it's just, like you said, it's stuff that you probably intrinsically already know. Like when you're sick, you don't really crave ice cream. Like you're not like you try to have like sometimes a glass of orange juice. And if you're already cold and chilly, you want something warm. You want soup, or like at least something cooked, right? Because you're like, I want to help myself feel better and warmer and whatnot. Like cold things are not going to be good. Unless you have the hot version of cold and you're sweating profusely, then you do want to cool down. Maybe that orange juice is going to be really quenching, right? But you definitely wouldn't want to add any more spice to that. So yeah, again, you're always trying to find what is the balance, and every element. So the 5 elements that have different organs related to them will have different foods that will help them. So kidneys, and again, it comes to that color wheel. So the kidneys are associated with the color black. So anything black will be great for the kidneys. Blackberries, black beans, dates, spirulina, and the blue-green algae. Like the darker they are, the better they are. Eggplant is actually really good for the kidneys, especially the blood, but kidneys in general. And then our spleen stomach, our spleen is going to want more root vegetables. So anything you can get your hands on for squash would be excellent at any point in time. If you have a spleen deficiency, which if you are a chronic worrier and maybe you eat a little bit more on the greasy, damp side of things, you probably have spleen deficiency. Almost every digestive issue can come back to the spleen in some way, because its whole role is the food that you eat. It's supposed to break it down into good nutrients and good quality blood. If it's not working because you're worried all the time, or you're eating on the go and you're not sitting and digesting, or you're like maybe watching like the news and getting all panicked about the state of the world while you're eating it, that's not going to help either. So you always want to be like slow eating and like kind of in a peaceful environment, and basically like shut out just focus on eating, be present when you're eating, and you will digest that food a lot better, get a lot more out of it. So yeah, so all the organs will have a different color and a different type of food that will help them. Lungs is white, so cauliflower, that kind of stuff. And funny enough, cauliflower looks like the shape of a lung, right? And kidney beans are the shape of kidneys, right? So it's funny how the things kind of, and walnuts are like your brain, right? So that's brain food. But liver will always be helped by anything that is sour or bitter. So sour, like lemon in your water, or plums, anything that makes your mouth like pucker, or vinegars, pickles, any of that stuff. Is get sour key candy. If you're going to eat candy, sour keys are the best. What else do I want to tell you about?
My mouth is going, like, I can feel that even talking about them.
Totally.
I loved
Yeah.
them when I was younger. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you crave that. You'll be like, if you're really stressed out, you'll be like, I just want something that's like a vinaigrette, or like something that has that like tanginess to it, or you'll crave sour candies, something that'll really get your mouth going, because it will move your liver energy. The sour flavor has that effect of moving qi. So that's one great way to do it. So yeah, so every organ will have some food and some color and some things that will enhance it. And of course, conversely, some things that could detract, right? So again, if you're talking about someone who has a lot of dampness, so this is going to be like digestive problems, phlegm, mucus, so like nasal drip, or like sinusitis all the time, or you have like mucousy stools, or you have maybe yeast infections. Those are all sign of dampness. So you want to get rid of that. And one of the best ways to do that is with acrid foods. So green tea is actually probably your best friend. If you have a cup of green tea a day, that will go very far. And that's probably why you see green tea in all the Asian restaurants, right? Because it helps you digest and like not really absorb all the kind of fatty foods that you might otherwise be getting. But yeah, so we're always looking again to just get whatever is in the way, to get it out of the way. And then once you restore that balance, things they go back into harmony on their own, right?
Yeah. And then it's like the system can keep flowing, which is just so neat about it, that it, it's not like you need a constant series of treatments, right? After you've got that loosened up kind of thing. But it is, of course, a part of, staying in balance anytime you're not, right, is when you pursue this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This has been wonderful start to, I think, at least another, if not more, conversations with you, Vanessa. I think there's so much to this knowledge in terms of knowing it's fascinating that we're talking about something that came into view because there was people in an affordability and access crisis. And here we are in an affordability and access to healthcare crisis. And so I think your work is going to become very important, and it's accessible for people too. So I think that's really important to know. So thank you so much for this. Is there anything before we close? I want to make sure I give you a chance to. So Blue Frog Wellness is Vanessa's business. It's in Nolan Hill in Northwest Calgary. And then again, the ear acupuncture group treatment sessions for stress and trauma are available on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Wayfound Mental Health Group. But Vanessa, please, if there's anything you're burning that you always want to share, I feel like you were saying last time, and I think it's important you say it again, that how much evidence there is of these treatments and how effectual they are. If you can just maybe list that off, and anything else that you wanted to touch before we wrap.
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Right on. Exactly that. And I think that was probably like one of the biggest criticisms when I was going through acupuncture school was, there's not a lot of evidence on that. There's not a lot of data. And there's two things I want to point out about that. Number one, there is actually a growing body of evidence there. Like I said, if you type in, especially Google Scholar, go to Google Scholar and type in acupuncture for X, like whatever that is, insomnia or digestive or fertility issues, or you'll find hundreds of articles, and you can really niche that down to specific groups or specific, like if you have a specific type of cancer, you can look at acupuncture for carcinoma, whatever, right? And so you can really find a good body of growing evidence that is out there. So it's not just the anecdotal stories of, my neighbor went and he said he feels so much better, or these people had a fertility issue and they had a child, whatever it is. But with that being said, the reason why, if you've seen studies that show that maybe acupuncture is inconclusive or it's no better than what other treatment was offered, or no treatment, or placebo, or whatever, it's largely because of this whole paradigm that we're coming from. It's usually not followed. So the Western model wants to follow scientific protocol, which I'm 100% a fan of. I definitely think we need that structure and discipline, and that's how we advance things. But with that being said, so for example, let's say we want to do a study on asthma, right? So, okay, we're going to get 20 people all in the same group who are all asthmatics. So we're going to treat them all with the same 10 acupuncture points and see who gets better, who doesn't. Right. And I guarantee you only half that group, or even less, will actually see some improvement, where the others will see no improvement or just marginal improvement. And it's because we didn't find the pattern. We didn't find out, oh, Susie has yin deficiency and Vanessa has qi deficiency and so has a damp obstruction or something else going on. So if you could do a proper study this way, the better way to do it would be get all those asthmatics in a group and then find out what is their pattern of disharmony first. So get a TCM diagnosis and then go from that. Like, okay, we have 4 different groups for diagnoses. All 4 are going to be treated with different acupuncture protocols because they'll have a different result. I guarantee it'll be far more effective than just treating everybody as a blanket treatment. And that's really what I've kind of taken from that data into my ear study is to basically look at, we know that, 5 native protocol points are really good for addictions and helping people with behavioral health issues, but not everybody has those same 5 points that are indicated for them. We all experience trauma in different ways. So we want to find out specifically what points do I need versus someone else? And we can do that with modern technology with the ear acupuncture locator. And you can find out what points are not working well and use those points. And as people change, you adapt and you make your protocol a little bit different based on that. So I'd say like there is good data out there, but just know that we can't blanket treatment everyone because we don't look at the disease. We don't look at just asthma. We look at that individual person in their environment and what's going on. And we come up with that pattern of disharmony and treat that. And that way we give individualized treatment, but we also really have an effect that's far greater than just trying to get everybody with the same blanket protocol. And then in addition to that, I think if I could close, I would just say with everything that's out there, like the other criticism I see a lot is like, oh, it has to be one way or the other, Western medicine or Eastern medicine. And you're missing the point if that's sort of your philosophy, because really the two go hand in hand. And that's why we call this integrative medicine, right? Where, we know that our current Western medicine model is fantastic for acute care, for emergencies, for things that are like dire need. You're having a heart attack or a stroke or whatever, a massive bleed, an aneurysm, right? I could use acupuncture points for those things, but I guarantee you I'm calling 911 before I put those in because I want to get that done. But then where Chinese medicine really shines is chronic diseases and preventative care and a lot of the pain stuff. Like instead of being hooked on opioids for the rest of your life, maybe you want to do acupuncture once every 2 weeks. Like there's a really nice melding of both, especially when you understand how each system can contribute. And we are luckily seeing a little bit more leeway in terms of hospitals here in Calgary that are allowing acupuncturists to come in and treat some of their patients that are, undergoing cancer treatment or they've had a surgery or whatnot. Even like dementia, Alzheimer's and memory issues and things like that. A lot of brain scalp acupuncture they're using for things like that. So we're seeing it more accessible. But I would just caution people from saying, oh, like I'm totally against this or that. It's like, try them both. Like you have all the tools at your fingertips. Why do we not try to use everything to try to help yourself get better, which then makes your family better, which then makes your community better, which makes the planet better, right? That's our whole goal, is to, heal people individually, and that collectively heals everything around us. So that's what I would leave you with there.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Yeah, I think there's so much to, like you said, being open to, and, nothing needs to be, better over another. Let's integrate them. There's a lot of parallels between these things when it's about root cause analysis, and that's successful in both paths and both short-term and long-term. So yeah, it's amazing how it all goes hand in hand and how you get those positive feedback loops in all those areas when we're working in the right direction. So anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate, especially you doing this again. And I should say for everybody else, I forgot to say that Alex had gotten sick this week. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us. But of course, he was disappointed to not be able to sit down with you again. So yeah, next time. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.